Hey, good evening. Actually, it's not really evening technically. It's still the afternoon. It's 5:54 p.m. It is May 1st and it is Thursday afternoon and I decided to come on here and make a video. Um, I just got back from the library probably about 30 minutes ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. But anyway, I did a lot of thinking while I was there. Today I went to the library specifically to look for work. Now, there really wasn't that many jobs that were posted specifically for me or that were calling out to me to apply. But I did the best I could, and I made it a conscious decision that, at this moment, this is the last week I'm going to be actively looking for work. We'll see how things go. But I'm looking for work, definitely. It's just that, like I said, after everything that happened on the Indeed.com, all the targeting, the trafficking, and the whole drama, it literally, I am getting very, very sick of the entire thing. But I still need to work. You know what I mean? So it's like, whatever happens, I might make my Indeed.com resume public. I prefer not to do that because I am not comfortable with people communicating with me. Like, I know that in order to get a job, you have to apply and they have to call you and get you in for an interview. I prefer that process be expedited as much as it possibly can. I honestly do not like dealing with this issue. I like to minimize it as much as I possibly can. So anyway, today I made that decision because I do not want to continually rely on my son. Okay. And I had mentioned this before. Uh, one of the things that makes me outstanding in the minds of many people is because my moral system is different than most people. I do base my moral system on the law, and also I understand I'm off of empathy. Okay. Now I understand as an adult what we want to do is we want to enjoy our life as much as we can. We want to have the best quality life we possibly can. Now, when I had my son, I wasn't married. I was a single parent, and but I did understand one thing. I understood that by the time my child was 18 years old, he was an adult, and I also understood the responsibility of a parent. Now, I was young at the time, and I had to deal with a lot of stress that was going on from the outside. Me being mommed out of jobs and everything. But I will say that I took the responsibility of looking for work. I did not want to be somebody who continually lived on handouts, and I did the best I could to support my son. And when I started on my journey, I was really young. I mean, like, I had my son when I was in my 20s, right? And like I said, I did come from a very dysfunctional family, and I raised my son, okay? And I don't think during the time that he was very young, I went through a lot of depression that was brought on through the work system. I realized that because some people they deal with things like postpartum depression. Like my adoptive sister Tanya, she dealt with postpartum depression, which is like a psychological or mental disorder, and it's generally temporary. Okay, when you deal with a lot of release of the body tissues and the entire excitement of being pregnant, and then certain realities start to hit you, and you start dealing with a slight form of some sort of mental issues like anxiety and different forms of things that could cause a mental upset. She went through that. I did not. When I had my son, I kid you not, like I gave birth to my son at 2:55 in the morning, and then I got released from the hospital that morning, and by 10 o'clock that morning I was up doing dishes. Okay, I have always been strong and I have always been powerful, but I never really realized it until other people brought it to my attention. But my point is that I never really thought deeply like or worried that I was not going to be able to take care of my son. I knew that my son was my responsibility. I fully understood that. And there were times when I was younger I didn't make the greatest decisions, but I still always, as I got older and I started to realize that life is very difficult, and I am somebody who is completely holding myself accountable for whatever it is I'm supposed to be responsible for. Okay, in life we are responsible for ourselves. Okay, the law is designed this way if you think about it, right? When we do something when we were children, our parents can be held responsible for the things that we do wrong. Like, for example, if I was to break a window and I was 12 years old, my parents may be fined for what I did wrong as a minor. Okay, but when I'm 18 years old, I am completely responsible for myself. Okay, and this is what I fully understood for myself, and I understood this for my child. Now, because I have a strong bond of love, okay, I am somebody who loves, and I do believe that love is a bond that is essential for human growth, regardless of who you are. There's some people who they don't quite understand, because I mean, when we talk about love, it sounds ishy and mushy and ew, like, that kind of stuff. But in really, my affection that I have and showed for to my son when he was little was genuine. I truly loved my son. Okay, there were times where it was frustrating being a parent, but I always knew that I loved my son, and I also wanted, and I cared deeply about his happiness. Okay, so going back to me feeling bad about my son being responsible, first of all, legally, I'd like to say that because both me and my son are over the age of 18, okay, we're only responsible for ourselves legally, okay. But some families who are close, who care about one another, they understand that life is hard, and even if that child is over the age of 18, they are always welcome back home, and that's how I truly feel. Okay, and in this case, my son is, taking care of his mom, and I appreciate that. I very much appreciate that. But what makes me emotional is the fact that I wasted my entire life, beyond my control, by being targeted by people who were out to get me, to ruin my life. And all I really wanted in my life was to feel some sort of sense of wholeness and control over my life, meaning I wanted to do the things that I never got to do. And I'm going to tell you, because when I left school when I was younger, because I was bullied, I realized how much I missed out of my life. Okay, so what made me it happy? One thing was when I understood I moved here to Bakersfield, but one thing I was happy with is that my son had friends. He had somewhat of a sense of roots, a sense of belonging. Like he would go to his friend's house during the week, and he would always have someone to do things with, and that was important to me because those things I never had. I never had those. Okay, and if I did have one, somebody I hung out with, the chances are they were a snitch. Okay, so in my life, it's like I always wanted, and I think what most people should want, okay, and if you don't feel this way towards your child, then this is another issue that we need to talk about in the moral reset. And I am talking about parents some people who have a hard time bonding with their kids. I am talking about this issue. Okay, but I truly always loved my son, and I always wanted my son to have the best life he possibly could. And one thing that you want as a parent, if you do love your child, is you never want your child to have to suffer anything that you suffered, ever. Okay, so now I'm looking at my life. I'm like, I got gray hair. I know my son's got gray hair. And I feel like these people have sucked up not just my life, but they sucked up my son's life too. Okay. And I was thinking about it at the library, and I'm emotional right now. I have a little bit of tears in my eyes because it's just suffering here on the earth. There's just incredible amounts of suffering, and it's like this hamster wheel that people, they make it seem so glorious to get on, but it's a nightmare. You know what I mean? So when I think about these groups of people that want to produce offspring and bring them onto this filthy shithole, I'm sitting here thinking, you're not thinking this through. What could you give people to make them feel better? This is a nightmare. To bring me back as Phoebe Braganza after 1956 and then bring me back in 1951, I mean, it's 1971. I mean, what the hell are you thinking? This is obviously, I mean, my tarot card reading confirmed this in the thing. It's like, nobody wanted to play this game. Okay. Anyway, obviously, I'm extremely emotional. I just got a little emotional, and I was holding it together. But when the time I got home, I'm like, okay, I'm upset. Let me clear my head. Let me start to separate my thoughts. What is it that's really bothering me right now? It's bothering me because I'm trying to untangle something that is very important for humanity it is a whole. Okay, the issue of human trafficking is very big. Okay, I'm thinking about what these people took, and this is one of the reasons why it upsets me so much. Like it literally, it just it's just it's traumatizing on so many levels to realize, okay, this is the cause of me being bullied in school. This is the cause of my family being indifferent to me. This is the cause of what my family joined a cult and conspire to have me done away with. Okay, my family was a part of that. Okay, I am extremely disturbed by all of this. You know what I mean? And it's extremely emotional to me. And so every day I sit here and I just want to get this out of my head. You know what I mean? I want to be able to move on and not have to sit here and think back on this ever again. It's like, I try to move on with my life, but they made it very hard to do that. Because right now I'm not working. I'm terrified to look for work. The process seems like it's a drag, and I get tired of people trying to reinforce my trauma. Anyway, I'm going to go on through some intuitive messages that I got that I felt like I needed to talk about because it's a lot on me. What some people think, okay, well, you're not working right now, Maria. You should be okay. It's over. But it shook me to my core because something like this happened in the United States of America. That just blows me away. It's like, I have always felt comfortable, in my country, thinking that I was safe. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I understand sometimes they do things, and like sometimes, we had these Christian fanatical people that would say things that I just kind of, raise my eyebrow at or whatever. But this right here is like, oh my God, um, it just got out of control. Anyway, first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about setting boundaries because I get the feeling that that's a good topic. And I am talking about this more in the moral reset, okay? But boundaries are not to be looked upon as offensive. We have to set boundaries for ourselves, okay? Just like I said, by the time we're 18, we're responsible for ourselves, okay? In the state of California, by the time we're 18, we're responsible for ourselves. And we have to protect ourselves, okay? One of the things I'm talking about, we're touching about on in the moral reset is the large amount of people who do suffer from mental illness in one form or another. Okay, it's common enough to just walk around and assume that a lot of the people that you're encountering are dealing with some sort of mental illness. And if they're not dealing with mental illness, let's just say they're having a bad day. And because they were raised in a tradition or they've been in environments where they truly didn't know how to handle these sort of social interactions that people may be experiencing, you might be experiencing rudeness or some sort of ill behavior from these people because this is all they know. Okay, and it's been reinforced in society over and over and over and over again. We live in a very ignorant society and a very dangerous one at that. Very dangerous. Okay, so we have to set boundaries. We have a right to set standards as to what is acceptable and what is not for our own protection. Not just our financial protection, but our own mental well being. And I'm going to tell you, your mental well being is everything in this society. Okay, and sometimes it's very hard to maintain because there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on around us, but you have to stay grounded. And one of the things that is important to me is creating these boundaries. So when you meet people that you want in your social circle, okay, you have to understand that they should respect your boundaries and you in turn should respect theirs. Like I said, I'm going to go into this a little bit more. Okay, there are certain things that people can do that could defile a relationship to the point of where you can never deal with this person ever again. Ever. Okay? I think, and I do not like to bring biblical things into this because right now I think we can all agree that the Bible has a lot of good things in it, but we need to figure out exactly what was manipulated and what was not. But some of the sayings, okay, are still important to look at, you know what I mean, and consider. Where was I going with this? Okay, so anyway, about setting boundaries. Okay, there are certain things that people can do, like the fact that my family allowed this to happen, and the reason why it was allowed to happen is because of their ego. And the reason why employers got in on bullying me is because they liked victimizing somebody because it gave them a sense of superiority. Okay, our egos can get people into trouble, and the reason why they enjoyed Mormons were collecting all of these members is because people enjoyed feeling this sense of being exclusive. Oh, we're a part of this and we are excluding her. Meanwhile, you know what I was thinking? You couldn't pay me to be a part of this. Okay, I look how traumatized I am, and through all of their bullying, I still would not want their religion. Okay, because I understood what that was. I didn't quite understand the whole cloning thing, that they were all into all that. I understood they were into genealogy, and I understood all that. Okay, I just recently came to put all of this stuff together when I was writing my last newsletter, because I understand about the Nazis and I understand about the Mormons, and then I started thinking, oh shit, this is the connection, right? We have to put in boundaries, because let people know what we are willing to accept in a relationship, whether that be platonic, our family relationships, or whatever. You know what I mean? And because we have to protect ourselves. Okay? There are people that I had gotten, I mean, I was forced to be in relationships with, okay, that have gotten into my life and have literally caused me nothing but more trauma. And I have a right to protect myself from receiving more trauma. Okay? Um, the boundaries is like, for example, I don't go into how my son was dragged into this, because I know that I do believe that when he was dragged into this, he was a minor, okay, a young kid. And I do resent that, because I had an adult indoctrinating my child, okay, my child under the age of 18. Now, my son, I've never told my son, what religion he could and could not belong into. But the thing is that these people were trying to put it into my son's head that something was wrong with me. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm somebody who's supposed to be scoffed at. I'm supposed to be laughed at. I'm supposed to be ridiculed. Okay. And this is what these people were, more than happy to do. But yet they were not in any way interested in getting me any sort of psychiatric help if they thought that I was crazy. Okay. Do you understand that these people are crazy? These people are mentally deranged. They're demonic. Okay. And the sad part is that we have people who claim to be Christians and whatever, and they're not able to determine whether they were dealing with something dark or not. You know what I mean? Because they don't have a sense of a moral system. Do you see how dark society is? It is extremely dark. So because I understand this, okay, I do set boundaries. It's okay to let people know, certain things could trigger me. Okay, this particular thing is only acceptable to a certain degree. And it's not because I'm trying to be a dictator, okay, because I have the right to protect myself. Okay. And there's sometimes you might encounter somebody that you're willing to give a chance of being friends with that person. Okay. And this is when it's important to let that person know I cannot have people lying to me, enforcing my trauma, any of that sort of stuff. Okay. Because if you had a true friend, okay, cares about healing, understanding, if your friend understands how rough the world is, okay, if your friend understands how insincere the world is, your true friend will protect you or help protect you from the trauma that the world can bring into your life, not introduce it and reinforce it. So it's very important that people are upright with me. And there's differences between acquaintances and who your friends are. Okay, like, I might know people who live across the street. I don't, but I might know them. I might say good morning to them. Okay, but I'm not expecting any loyalty from them. You know why? Because we never sat down and talked about that sort of connection. Okay, now if I'm sitting down, we're talking, you're hanging out at my house, it's been like 2 or 3 days or going into this or whatever, and we're starting to develop a relationship. I need to start having trust in you, and I cannot trust people who lie. Okay, I've dealt with experience. I've talked about other people who've dealt with lying. I've studied people lying. I get it. Okay, and there are certain things that it's difficult in this world. So this is one of the reasons why when I talk about the Bible, we talk about things like Noah's Ark. Okay, the reason why Noah was in the ark in the first place is because God at the time deemed Noah as the only person that was worthy of, and even that, he was somewhat worthy of continuing his life. Okay. Everyone else was corrupt. Okay. And you think, oh, only Noah and his wife. Yes. Yes. Okay. When we think about the Bible, we talk about, people being deceived in large numbers. Okay. what is that one scripture? Like, I mentioned it before. The broad and the spacious is the road leading to destruction, and straight and narrow is the road leading to righteousness. This is absolutely true. Okay, because most people are happy about letting people set their standards for them. Most people are happy because they're like being ignorant. They do not want to look up or think for themselves. And that's a problem. And this is what led to all of this. This is what led to people, accepting Mormonism or not questioning why these people thought that they had the right to do this in the first place. Okay, so in a world that obviously has shown me that it has a lot of moral issues, like it seems it's immoral. Okay, a lot of people in the world are immoral. I'm just going to come out and say it. They're immoral. Okay, and a lot of people are ignorant. You know what I mean? They don't know, or they willfully ignore things that are legal or whatever. So I am a woman all by herself, and that is very scary. So I have every right to set boundaries. I have every right to set standards, and everyone else does too. Anyway, I'll go more into that in the moral reset. Also, yes, I do understand that I have been favored by the divine in all my lives, in every life. And so, Mormons or people who think, in terms of the earthly plane is, filled with materialism, money, but we all know what money does. Okay, look what my family did to me. Look what they thought was okay to do to a human being. The human trafficking industry is huge, okay? And then when you think about, the kind of exploitation that goes on, like King Solomon, they say, oh, King Solomon, oils, tapestries, all kinds of stuff. I get nothing from it, okay? But what it is that I've been blessed with the power of the divine in all my lives. And if they thought that I was being punished, they were wrong. Okay? Nowhere in the Bible says that you're guaranteed riches. Nowhere, Jesus Christ in the Bible had secular employment. Okay, so it is not based on your riches. Okay, as a matter of fact, I'm going to quote the Bible again. The Bible talks about it is more likely for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than the rich man to inherit the kingdom of God. The reason why is because when people are focused on money, they are all about the earthly plane. They're all about it. They don't seem to mind the sort of things that go on in order to obtain the money. And we all know what people do to obtain the money. Okay, money is the root of all evil. It just is. And like I said, I understand that we have to have it, but I don't have to like it. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't love the monetary system. I understand, it's a means to an end. I have to pay my rent. I got to have a job. I got to have food. I got to have a job. I have to have consistent income. That's the way it is. You know what I mean? But I don't have to like the fact that, certain things that are sold in stores or made in sweatshops for kids are like not barely eating or whatever. I understand the slave system underneath everything. Okay? And it disturbs me. But yes, I have been favored in a connection with divine all my life. And this is being persecuted is a sign of someone being of the divine. We think about Jesus's life, okay? That's all Jesus knew, okay? And I think about, I was going to do a video called my Judas Iscariots, meaning Judas Iscariot was the one who betrayed Jesus, okay, in the Bible, right? And I was going to do a video about my betrayals, okay? But that will have to come another time. So if you're somebody who lives the right path, meaning like for example, somebody, I'm a loyal person. Okay, most people, they have no concept. They don't know what integrity means. Like I said, businesses use that word all the time. Okay, it's a marketing ploy for them. Okay, but I understand what integrity means, and integrity to me has a lot to do with trust and reliability. You know what I mean? Like if I say I'm going to be at your house at 9:00 to babysit your kid, guess what? I will probably try. I'm going to try to be there at 8:59. Why? Because I want to follow through my word. If I said I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's integrity. Okay. I did get the intuitive message that, that people are embracing my healing videos. Because there was a time when I started making my videos that I would say something and then I would deal with some form of retaliation. you know, and it was like, why are you doing this? But see, I at the time I knew it was inappropriate what they were doing, but I didn't understand that I was like in a deep bloodline targeting thing. Like it was like anything that I would say, they were like, oh really, we're gonna show her. It's like they wanted to constantly, you know, show me, reinforce something, and I'm like, this is not, I didn't ask to be a part of this. I didn't ask to be a part of that. So I dealt with unnecessary, unspeakable abuse for no reason. It was one sided. It was something that these people did all on their own. I can't take any blame for it. And so I'm glad that people are not going to sit here and try to beat me or try to think that this is a competition. It's not a competition. This is somebody who is literally mentally affected by all the things that happened to me that were illegal, that I was rightfully, you know, deserving to receive legal compensation. Okay, I will tell you, legal compensation starts at the minimum of $650,000 just for sexual harassment alone. So calling me into all of these employers, if you, you know, I should be have racked up the dough from all these violators, okay, who treated me like shit. And then the fact that I was blacklisted. All I mean, if you think about all of these sort of violations that occurred in my life, okay, the very fact that they ruined my credit. Yes, I'm going to take responsibility for that. Yes, and so you could have said, oh, well, you could have borrowed the money from your son. Let me tell you something. Like I said, going about to accountability, it is not my son's responsibility. That's my responsibility. Okay? It is not my responsibility to say he can pay this and pay that. Now, he can do what he can. Okay, but it is not my responsibility to sit here, you can pay off my car, do this. That's too much. Okay, I was taking responsibility for my life when I decided to, you know, sign up with Ko-fi and Patreon. Why? Because it's like, okay, this is taking, the employment sector thing was taking too long, and I've always believed in taking responsibility for myself. It is no one's responsibility to take care of Maria other than Maria. And I knew this. Okay, so anyway, I already talked about that before, but ooh, that really pissed me off. Anyway, yes, I am from the Most High. Meaning like, yes, I am from God. Okay? Yes, that is the truth. I am a creature from God. The God. Okay? The main one. All right? But things seem different from what a lot of people know because, like I said, you know, there is man-made traditions. There are people who are following traditions that were set in place, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago that they still honor because they feel as though those things are necessary. They have not evolved. Okay? It is not about rebellion, the very fact that women have the right to protect themselves. I'm not trying to overstep, you know, men or trying to be defiant in any way. It is what it is. Okay? And I'm trying to live the best life I possibly can. That is the goal in life. To get through hell the best way you possibly can. And that's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, so yes, I am from God. Anyway, yes, I do favor mysticism. I've said this before. I favor mysticism over people. And like I said, the reason why I favor mysticism over people, meaning like my connections to God, things that make me feel like close to God. I hate to use the word God because we know how people have dragged that name into the ground. But I tend to focus on spiritual things more so. And that's really what interests me. And even surrealism. I mean, I do not like dealing with people. Because, like I said, people have been brainwashed for a very long time, and they usually come at me with some sort of dishonest, you know, game, some sort of con game, some sort of, like, you know, manipulative trick, or they want to throw some gaslighting on the side. I can't deal with that. So, yeah, I prefer to just keep my sanity. You know what I mean? Which reminds me that, you know, I think for right now, it's better for me to stay off Facebook and Instagram and all of those things, okay, at this moment, okay? I did mention somebody asking me for money. And like I said, okay, if I was in a position to give, I would give. Now, this person responded to me, well, I wish you'd ask for a loan. If I had somebody to ask for a loan, I would do that. Okay, mind you, I was a targeted individual, which means that they have wiped away every single contact that I had, and they probably wouldn't have given me that anyway. I do not have anybody to ask for. Also, the only person that is, you know, helping me right now, my son just recently lost his job. My son has already been, you know, put in a position to take care of things that he shouldn't be taken care of, but I am very grateful that he is. So it's like, it's unreasonable. I do not believe in being a burden to anyone. Okay. And I understand, sometimes people can be a burden to another person. Okay. And by me asking my son for one more thing, you know what I mean, that I understand he has his limits too. Okay. And he has the right to say, enough is enough, for his own mental sanity, for his own financial protection. The same with me. Okay, and like I said, if I was working and I was consistent and I had the money to give, you better believe I'd give. Of course I would give. I can't tell you how it hurts me knowing that this person doesn't have enough to feel satisfied, because I always thought that he did, and it literally breaks my heart. It's just one of those just another, disappointment that I came to realize as an adult, that the world isn't exactly what I thought it was. Okay, and literally it does. It really saddens me. It saddens me. Like, you don't even know. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Mormonism and Mormons that are responsible for dual affiliations. I will be going more into this in the Moral Reset, but because it's so heavy on my mind. Okay, I had talked about how my father was targeted. My father developed Alzheimer's. I do not believe that was something that happened to him naturally. Okay. But I do believe it was a combination of the medicine that they were giving him. And I also do believe that they were prescribing him. And I also do believe that the high level stress situations that they did, same sort of tactics they played out on me, they played on my father. Okay. Along with their medications and everything else. Do I believe that the Mormons, when you have things like dual affiliations, we have people like capable of murder, even in like medical facilities. Do I believe that that's possible? Absolutely. Okay, when we talk about people trying to figure out where human trafficking, or people being poisoned or whatever, does that happen in the medical facility? Yes, I do believe it does. Also, I just mentioned in one of my videos a while ago, actually it was a long time ago, I had talked about when my son was little, I took my son in to be vaccinated for something. Okay, it was like one of those requirement things that you have to do, like, when they become a certain age. So I took my son in for his appointment. Okay, then I had the doctor insert something into my thigh. That wasn't my appointment. Okay, but who's to say he was not a Mormon who, during this church service, heard or was influenced, because they knew that I was going to be bringing my son in for a medical appointment, and therefore they notified the medical facility, or they were in communication or something, to do what they did. Insert me something inside of me. Whether that was just, a water or a tracking device. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, this is how this sort of stuff operates. The dual affiliation type thing. I also discovered through my tarot reading, through the one that I did for, I think it was the first quarter, me talking about how I worked in the funeral business. Okay, anywhere you're extracting fluids and stuff like that, or Mormons or anybody who, or I don't even want to say Mormons, okay, because this sort of fanaticism could happen in any religion. Okay, and in the Moral Reset, I'm not sitting here using the Mormon Church specifically. I'm just basically saying religions in general. Okay, because I know other religions are guilty of this sort of stuff too. Okay, but when it comes to being able to cut down on this sort of crime, figuring out where all this stuff is happening, this is where it's happening. Okay, and places that you feel like you can trust, like your medical facilities, okay, like your doctor's offices, like, oh my God, this is horrible. Yes, they're fucking with the dead, messing with dead people. You know what I mean? Like I said, I remember reading the article about the Mormons who thought it was necessary to perform these baptismals of the dead on behalf of these Jewish people who just didn't get a chance to be baptized. So they had some sort of ceremony or whatever, and the Jewish community was like, whoa, wait a second. Nobody consented to that. We don't agree with that. Okay? And like I said, who's to say, your membership to them, or your baptism, your formal baptism, or whatever, through a ceremony or ritual, may be putting you on some sort of list through like your baptismal certificate, could be putting you on a list to be cloned again, to come right back to this hellhole. You know what I mean? I believe that Mormonism to me is a deceptive religion. Okay, on so many levels, immoral. Like you don't. I mean, just beyond immoral. But yeah, it's the dual affiliations. It's important to talk about how this stuff gets creeped in. Like we talk about targeted individuals. Targeted individuals, this is one of the reasons why they don't have any place to hide or they have nowhere to go. And I would think that even though a lot of targeted individuals are not victims of cause stalking, which is basically gang stalking, but cause stalking is specifically doing all these horrible, acting all these horrible tactics out on a person for the purpose of converting them to their religion. But yeah, I do see that dual affiliations, meaning like a Mormon or somebody or a religious person in general, okay, who is highly indoctrinated in their church, to have this us versus them thing, calling out certain individuals to be harassed. You know what I mean? This is what is most likely highly encouraged in their church. And I will tell you, when you have this us versus them mentality, it probably does attract a lot of members, probably more so than having an all-you-can-eat buffet best special at your church activity or something. And because people have this desire to be like the us, they like that kind of stuff. Some people are very attracted to the hoorah, let's bully up on people type stuff. Okay, but when it comes to things that relate to legal stuff, okay, and this is what we're talking about. This is one of the reasons why I'm talking about the moral reset. People need to be held accountable for their actions. Okay, just like the lawyers in this community who were convinced by the Mormon Church. To me, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that I'm calling out the bullshit. I'm calling out that they had a responsibility as a lawyer to have identified what was going on in the first place. Okay, being me is it's cool in some ways, but it sucks at the same time, because I can call out corruption. I can identify what is corrupt. I know that there's a lot of cookie cutter professionals sitting in their office and taking and just reveling in the fact that they have a title that they really don't deserve. Okay, I see this. Okay, it's quite disturbing. The next thing is, I want to attach in the description box. What I'm going to be attaching is a video that was created, I believe, in the 1980s. And I've actually thought about this from time to time because I think it's funny. There's certain things that I watch for the comedy. Okay, it's not meant to be comedy, but it's so bad. It's so bad that it's like, oh man, that sucks so bad, but I'm going to watch it because it's funny. Okay, it's just weird humor. Okay, I will tell you some of the things that I thought were funny back in the 80s were a lot of the PSAs. Okay, some of the anti-drug ones, it's not that it wasn't an important message, because obviously that they were, okay? It's just the way that they were created. It's the cheesy lines that were used that were in the movie. It's funny. Okay, anyway, back in the 80s, I remember the LDS had a commercial about a public service announcement, and it was about lying. It was like, it had this little catchy tune, like, one lie, you gotta tell another. I was thinking about that today, recalling that in my memory. I am putting it in the description box if you want to check it out and have a couple of laughs, okay? My point is that, I believe that the Book of Mormon, okay, just like, a lot of other people back in the day when I was growing up and before then, okay, the Book of Mormon, to me, I've taken I'm a little uncomfortable with it, because it is a third testament, meaning, like I said, most people believe that the Bible was complete with the Old and the New Testament merged together. It was considered to be whole, complete, and there was a scripture talking about, it's not to be added or taken away from, okay? Which is one of the reasons why a lot of people were like, why are you making a Book of Mormon? It's like you're creating your own story and then expecting it to be as holy as what some people perceive the Bible to be. Okay, fine. My point is that does not necessarily mean that Joseph Smith did not have visions or that he did not have a relationship. And like I said, he could have had special visions, messages just for him. And he decided everybody needs to be like this. It could have been just specifically for him. Okay, that's one thing. The also thing is that, that does not mean that Mormonism was meant I do believe that more the whole thing about cloning and the archons and stuff like that, that is to me is very dark and very sick. Okay, but I do understand that Mormons have an association with genealogy. And I do understand in this commercial that they're talking about lying and why it's wrong. It's a moral that I would think most people would understand, that as a religious person, you should not lie. And I understand we are only humans. Sometimes we do something and we get caught and we do something. We come out with I'm going to call it an impulsive white lie. Okay. I can't think of anything right now, but you know what I'm talking about. There's times we do, but I do believe that there are people who may have had a decent heart who went into Mormonism with sincerity. They did not mean to be a part of something this dark, okay? But we also have some people take a lot of pride in their affiliations, meaning like they might be proud, okay, like school pride. Okay, like I know back in high school, it was kind of cool to mess with other schools' mascots and stuff like that. Why? Because it's a slight version, a very played down version of the us versus them type mentality, right? That can get out of control. And when it comes to religion, ego, okay, I've been in conversations when, like, Mormons are talking about bloodlines and stuff like that. I've been around Mormons enough to understand, how it's important for them. They have a belief that, they do study bloodlines. It's important to them. They want to feel a sense of empowerment. And sometimes that need could, like I said, because we have self-interest is completely normal. But when you go overboard, okay, this is when things like unnecessary competitions come in. This is also a time when jealousy and envy, if it gets escalated, if you can escalate that, okay, it can be toxic, it can be poisonous, it could be deadly, okay? This was based on the idea of bloodline targeting. So they went into this, some people went into this with the idea of, I'm going to beat you. They thought it was a competition. They thought perhaps maybe I came out of the incubator, or sorry, I came out of my celebrity's mom's womb, right? With this need and desire to be in a constant argument and battle with them. That was the furthest thing from my mind. But I will say I was divinely led to have an interest in Mormonism because, like I said, when I was little, I found that very interesting. I wanted to know more. I wanted to have a Book of Mormon for myself. I would always ask questions. I was always interested in this religion. And the reason why is because it relates to my past life. But yeah, I'm putting the commercial in there. And I like I said, everybody probably has been a part or has belonged to the Mormon church for their own reasons. Some people were born into it. This is the only life that they know. Both of their parents were Mormon. They were raised Mormon. That's the world. You know what I mean? And they don't, and chances are, if they were born and been around and their parents, and they were very strong in their belief system, and they might have, indoctrinated their kids to believe something that may not be right. I mean, when I mean not be right, means it could be something that is considered socially dangerous or destructive, to other people. You know what I mean? And they don't have any other sense of perception of the world because the only thing they've ever read was Mormonism. You know what I mean? Aside from that, I want to make it very clear that I am in no way telling people that they can or cannot be part of religion. I'm not even saying that the Mormon church should, whatever. The Mormon church can do whatever they want, okay? But I do want people to understand that the Mormon church has caused my life to be very unhappy. The Mormon church, and the thing is that I have dealt with narcissistic people within that group that gives them a charge. They are so thrilled because they feel as though they're the winners. They won. Because the goal is to make sure that Maria had no life. Okay, why? Because they felt as though all the glory and honor was deserving for them only. In their weird, sick mind, okay? And what I'm going to tell you right now, there is no glory and there is no honor of the world. There is none. Only exploitation. That is all there is. That is a false hope. That is a false lie. That is a lie from the devil. If you think that, materialism or being associated with wealth Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I have a very healthy and understanding of what money is. I do not love money. I am not a lover of money. I am not a lover of the material plane, like earth dwellers. To me, what some of these Mormon people showed me is that they themselves are earth dwellers. Where maybe some people who went into Mormonism, in the beginning at least, may have at least wanted to have some sort of spiritual fulfillment. They were hoping that this is what they were going to get. Maybe they got wrapped up in the drama for other reasons or whatever. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm going to tell you right now, I am very sick and I'm not able to deal with Mormons. Okay? I can't deal with it. Okay? I have been dealt with entirely too much trauma because of the Mormon thingy. And when I think about it, it just like, to me, that's an evil. That whole experience, like the whole exploiting somebody, knowing that I was cloned against my will, coming around, creating all these problems, taking from me, okay, then acting as if I have to explain myself, demoralizing me, basically putting me in a form of human trafficking, making me miss out on my life, you know, and they're sitting here thinking that that's okay. You know what I mean? And like I said, you know, I was thinking about something really quick, and I did want to mention this real quick. It was about, oh, okay, I know that they were, you know, because what they were trying to do, they were trying to bully me into committing suicide. They wanted to ruin my life, okay? I've noticed, okay, and I don't go to the gym, okay? To me, that's like an added expense that I do not want to ever. They thought that I was somebody who was into the gym. I'm not. I go for walks mostly to clean my head, okay? I don't eat a lot of junk food, but it has nothing to do with me trying to be sexy or anything. But I do find it interesting that Rex Laverne wanted to bully me for being somebody that he thought was somebody like that, right? But yet he himself had a gym membership. Okay, so you can tell that this was all a competition. Okay, that I had no interest in playing. I am very angry that people participated in this. I am very angry that the narcissism, okay, within this group, like, oh, you know, I can put the responsibility, you know, on everyone else. It's their responsibility. Okay, it's a responsibility. I deserve like good compensation for what happened to me. I deserve that. All right, legally. So I have the right to feel the way that I do. And you know, this is my frustration when you deal with ignorant people, because I was dealing with this issue in 2025. I mean, 2000 when I left Murray Family Farms, and I just want to be over it. You know, I hope that, you know, I don't know what's going on in the work sector. I just want to be able to find a job that's okay, and I want to be able to do my job, and I want to come home. I do not want any more drama. I do not want to have to deal with people like, you know, sitting here talking about my clothes, looking at me, whatever, making a big deal. I cannot stand that. I can't stand it because I don't deserve it. You know what I mean? I go to work, and I go to work because I am a good worker. And I have to take responsibility for myself. I got to pay my bills. I'm trying to be a responsible person, and I'm also trying to live the best life I possibly can, what's left of it. I'm not here for political debates or whatever, although at this point I am talking about it. I'm not trying to debate it. I'm just basically saying these are my rights. This is what the law says. Okay, this is what, and I'm talking about rude people. I'm talking about people who don't have an understanding of like social etiquette. And what happens to, why do we instantly pull back from people who speak a certain way to us? You know what I mean? It's not like you're doing it on purpose. Like when people speak rudely to you, you intuitively just kind of back up and make a mental note. I don't ever want to have to encounter that person ever again. I'm just letting people understand why. Okay, why? Anyway, yes, I am someone who is being known for my psychological research and human understanding. That's wonderful. I'm glad. That's what I'm here for. Anyway, and then also I get the intuitive message that everyone is glad that the Mormons were exposed, including the members. Maybe they felt as though this was like a heavy burden to bear and they couldn't take it anymore. I would say that it is. I couldn't be a part of a genocide program and go to sleep at night and think nothing of it. I would be guilty. I would feel like I would need psychological help if I was one of the people who called somebody into their job office knowing that this was a genocide program, knowing that these people were threatening my life, and you're going to sit here and have this stupid job interview with me. And then you're going to go to bed and go to sleep and think that that's okay. You know what I mean? I had talked about some of the people, and I named names, specific people who were very abusive and did a lot of stupid things. Okay, this is what you were a part of. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'm glad that they woke up and realized that what this really was. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, you know, people like me have to put up with people who deal with it. I deal with ignorance all the time. And so this is one of the reasons why I am somebody who prefers, you know, the surreal, the supernatural, something surreal, something out of my mind. I would rather deal with the inner working of my mind than dealing with people. That's the truth. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will be back with another video sometime later. Take care. Bye.